today we're continuing looking at dramatic methods and moving on from the annotations that you've made on the extract from Act 3, Scene 3 to look at actually how can you include these dramatic methods in your writing. What does it look like in a really good paragraph? I'm starting off with this slide again, the reminder of what examiners are looking for when they're considering your work, because we'll be looking at a model paragraph and looking at how it does meet these 5 criteria, but obviously there's going to be a specific focus on dramatic method and how you include these in your writing. So the paragraph that I'm going to be using as a model is based on Act 5, Scene 2 and the previous lessons and presentation. Again, here's a photograph of my annotations, everything focused in on dramatic method, and I'm going to show you one paragraph of what would be a longer response where I discuss in detail Othello's final words, because for me I think that's a really particular thing that you would talk about in any response on this extract. And so on the next slide I'm going to give you an example of my writing and a paragraph in response of this, and talk you through breaking it down into all of the criteria that the examiner would be looking for. So here is one paragraph, as I say, of what would be a larger response. I might have 1 or 2 more paragraphs actually looking and really talking in detail about the extract. And of course, obviously, I've started already with that contextual overview, which I showed you last lesson. So kind of bear in mind that this isn't the full piece, it's an example of what one paragraph of writing could look like. Take some time to read it through slowly and carefully, pause the video while you do that, and then when you're ready, move on, start the video again, and I'll talk you through the different bullet points and how I'm kind of meeting the exam criteria. So this has been colour-coded to draw your attention to particular features, all of which tie in with what it is that the examiner will be looking for explicitly when they're marking your work. Everything that remains in black is where I'm addressing the significance of the extract. Remember, for AQA, significance means what different meanings, what ideas emerge, what is signified, what is conveyed. And so my sections in black are either kind of directing the reader to specific moments of the text and then looking at, well, why are they there? What is it teaching me about this character? What is it teaching me about Othello at this particular moment, and how he is developing as a character and where that fits in the nature of the tragic narrative? So the black is there, and I know I'm ticking off that first part. I do know that I need to link to the overall tragedy of the play, and I've done this in 2 ways in this extract. The green sections, which you'll see, are moments where I'm making references to other moments in the play. And remember, it's trying to get the balance of how much extract, how much other moments. The extract should dominate, and you'll see here in the green where I have referenced other moments, I've made a kind of a direct quotation to them, but I've said, okay, well, how does that then reflect what is going on here in the extract, or how does it show a change in terms of character, or how other people view that character to the extract? So I'm always linking these very kind of brief comments to other moments in the play back to the extract. I'm also showing how this extract works in the overall tragedy of the play with the blue sections as well. And this is where I'm referencing those kind of aspects of tragedy that AQA have given us. And I'm going to talk more about those in a second. But I finally want to bring your attention to the purple. This is where I have highlighted all of the quotations from the extract. And remember that this is something that is explicitly stated in those 5 bullet points on the first slide. You know, how many times are you referencing the extract? You can see that I have done it an awful lot, and that's kind of what you need to be building up. It's no longer one quotation will do. It's getting a real weight of evidence, noticing lots of different details to build your picture. So that's me kind of looking at some of the bullet points. I'm going to stop and talk a little bit more about the sections in blue and the aspects of tragedy before I move us on to focus on to the dramatic methods. So here's a reminder of the slide that you will have seen many times before from in class, which is the AQA terminology grid, all of the words and phrases that they associate with aspects of tragedy. And set alongside this, I've just copied and pasted all of the bits of the paragraph that I've written that I've colour-coded blue, where I think I'm dealing with the tragedy as a whole and the genre of tragedy. So you can see in referencing suicide, I'm tying in with ideas of death and catastrophe, of endings and tragic magnificence. All of this you can see on the AQA grid. When I'm talking about acceptance of his loss and status, I'm then tying into anagnoriasis, that moment of tragic realisation, the changes in fortune of the tragic hero. Reputation absolutely ties in with tragic hero and identity and loss. We've got Othello reaching an understanding of himself. I've already covered that with reputation, but we could add there that perhaps there would be some positives emerging from this. Catharsis, I think, speaks for itself and ties in with the bottom idea on here, the terrible sense of waste. Restoring justice ties in with the misjudgments that have been made, particularly around the treatment of women. It also ties in with learning and moral growth. And finally, positives emerging. And changing character I've addressed, death of a tragic hero I've addressed with suicide. But you can see with these phrases, I'm absolutely showing my marker that I'm rooted in tragedy and the conventions of tragedy. I'm not using all of the Aristotle's kind of very fancy Latinate words. I don't need to. You don't get extra marks for using those, and in actual fact, examiners often comment that candidates kind of put all of these long words in, like anagnoriasis or peripeteia, but actually they're not using them in context, and they're not really showing what they mean, or that they know really what they mean. They're using them because people think it makes them sound clever, and it doesn't. So unlike my speaking just then, make your writing really clear, make it straightforward. Because in here, this language that I've been using in the blue isn't challenging, isn't difficult, but it absolutely shows the examiner that I know what I'm talking about. I am absolutely rooted in the genre of the tragedy. So I've addressed two of those bullet points there, significance of the extract to the overall tragedy, and also am I quoting a lot from the extract. I'm also hoping that I've met the final criteria, which is the clarity of my written expression. But I am now going to focus in on that dramatic methods and how I can really signal this very easily in my writing. The same extract, but this time I've changed the highlighting, the colour coding, and I've just stripped everything away and put certain phrases in red. These are where I know, as a marker, or particularly I'm thinking this is a candidate who is absolutely embracing dramatic method. And as you read it through, you'll see that I'm not doing anything really difficult or really challenging. I'm just using the language of my writing to really signal very clearly to my marker that I'm addressing dramatic method. So I'm starting off with my opening phrase, and I do something immediately on the structure of the extract. I'm aware that the extract the examiner has given me is building up to this moment, Othello's final words. So I've got that in. I also very early on mentioned audience. This time I think the audience would be rapt, they'd be absolutely engaged. Of course they would be with what's happening on stage at this moment. But I'm then therefore showing my examiner that I know that this is a visual piece. It's something to be seen. So I'll be wanting to address that in any paragraph that I write. What is it that the audience are seeing in front of them? The next bit, I really start to zoom in and focus in on quotations from the actual extract, and I've got failure to elaborate. The short, he asks, he also frames this, he repeats 4 different ways, beginning with. All of this, I'm dealing with the structure of the dialogue, how that speech by Othello is put together, the choices that Shakespeare has made at this moment, and how therefore it can be interpreted. But all of those sort of tick off that criteria of dramatic methods. This ties in with the 4 requests. Sorry, I've missed that off there. Moving on to kind of the final third of this section, again I start to talk about this final dramatic act and Othello stabbing himself. I'm bringing in stage direction reference there. I'm talking about this piece in performance. I'm talking about it as a drama. So again, I'm absolutely engaging with narrative method. And then I move on to have a look at the final section of this speech in quite a lot of detail again. Again, you'll see there's lots of quotations here, really close analysis. And I'm dealing with the language of that Othello is using in this speech, or Shakespeare has given Othello to use. And again, how that leads me to respond to this character at this moment. So this goes back to all of those annotations that I have done. If you have your annotated slide for Act 5, Scene 2, and you've compared it with mine, you can see how I've drawn out loads of those things that I've highlighted in my extract. I haven't talked about everything, I haven't had time to, but I've presented a really compelling case about Othello and what he learns at this moment and how he wants to be seen. So I'm really engaging with him as a tragic hero, his moment of realisation, and that kind of reversal of fortune and this attempt to kind of restore himself to some kind of tragic, kind of magnificence again, that figure that we saw at the start of the play. So you might want to now spend some time going back and having a look at the paragraph, again, kind of merging both of the colour coding together, but you can see that not a word is wasted. Everything that I'm writing conveys meaning. But this red section I absolutely want you to kind of imprint in your memory, because later on I'm going to be asking you to write your own paragraph, and I want you to be thinking about how you can really signal this to your marker. So you will remember this extract. This is what you were working on previously at the end of the last presentation, the extract from Act Scene 3, and I asked you to annotate it, looking at those 5 kind of key areas of dramatic method. You've obviously done that. I would like you now to get that work out again, have this extract in front of you, and I want you to compare it now with what I have produced for you on the very next slide. So whilst I presented it slightly differently for you, I wanted to do it in this way because then again you could see those 5 key areas that I would be investigating for dramatic method. They're in bold, you can see them really clearly, and under each one I've identified what I have noticed from the extract. So rather than annotating the extract and perhaps having it a little bit unclear because it's not necessarily very well structured when you annotate, I've tried to present it in a really structured way. Read through what I have written here, so pause this video, spend time reading it through, compare what I have noticed with what you have noticed. Now I will have missed things. I absolutely, there's always more that can be said with English, that's the beauty of the subject. However, have you noticed the similar kind of things to me? Is there anything that you could add to your extract? Spend some time comparing and adding and building up, because I am going to be asking you to write about the extract in the next task. So I want to make sure that you've got plenty of ideas to talk about. So, producing a piece of writing now. I would like you to kind of use what you've understood from being talked through that previous example on Act 5, Scene 2, to produce just one paragraph on Act 3, Scene 3. I'm not asking you to do the setting of the scene and that opening overview, but I'm asking you to do a main body paragraph. So I'm suggesting that you perhaps choose to write about one of these 3 ideas. If you have one of your own, then that's fine, but if you're not quite sure where to start, I think that you could write a paragraph about the opening of this extract and the conversation between Othello and Desdemona, and explore the significance of that little conversation and why Shakespeare chooses to put it there. Certainly you could write about the conversation between Emilia and Iago, and again what aspects of significance, what meanings, what ideas are emerging from this conversation that is important in the development of the overall tragedy. Again, why has Shakespeare put that conversation between that couple in at this moment? Or you could choose to write about and look at the handkerchief and how the handkerchief is talked about by both Othello and Emilia and Iago, because we know that this plays a hugely important role in the play. So if this was my exam response, these would be the 3 areas that I know I would want to cover. I am asking you to cover just one, and I would like you to produce one paragraph, really focusing in on not just exploring the significance of that moment and where it fits within the wider tragedy of the play. Obviously, you're going to be quoting from the extract, you're going to be making some reference back across, and you're going to be rooting it firmly in the tragedy, but I also want you to think really, really carefully about dramatic method. So go back to your annotations, go back to that last slide that I provided with you, where I'm really talking about how the piece has been constructed, how it's been put together, and the meanings that are for you to think about from there. Write up this paragraph. Now, obviously in the exam, this kind of question you have to write really quickly. We've got more time now, but I'm going to sort of suggest that you spend half an hour on this paragraph. So it's more time than you would ever have in the exam, but plenty of time to focus in on just one short paragraph of writing, but to really think about perfecting it. Go back through, edit it, make changes, compare it with the one that you've seen on Act 5, Scene 2, to really make it as good as you can. Once you have finished, there is one last thing I would like you to do on it before you send it to me. And that last thing is I would like you to colour code it just as I have done on the example that I've shown to you. You'll have sections in black where it's you exploring the meanings, you'll have a colour for the quotations, you'll have a colour where you've directly referenced other moments of the play, you'll have a colour which links in with aspects of tragedy, and finally that red colour is massively important where you're talking about dramatic methods. If you think that you haven't got enough of those, you need to redraft and work on your paragraph a little bit more and add. But if you think that you've got plenty and you're really proud of this paragraph, then send it across to me and I will mark it for you. Thank you very much.